Asterisk the sun gleamed coldly on the steel and glass tower of First Federal Trust Bank in Midtown Manhattan, reflecting the power and prestige of the institution inside. On the 47th floor, the walls were lined with abstract art and the scent of mahogany. Polish hung faintly in the air. This was not a place for mistakes or sentimentality. But today, Elijah Grant had brought both success and sentiment to this table. Asterisk Elijah, a 42-year-old black CEO of Nova FinTech, was on the cusp of finalizing a $5 billion acquisition deal, one that would merge his cutting-edge digital financial platform with legacy institutions across Europe and Asia. The deal had made headlines for weeks. Billionaires called him the new Rockefeller. But Elijah had only one guest of honor on this day, his father, Leonard Grant. Leonard was dressed simply pressed slacks, a beige jacket, and polished brown shoes that had seen better years. A retired postal worker, his dark hands bore the pias, marks of decades of labor. He looked uncomfortable in the boardroom of power suits and silent iPhones. But Elijah had brought him here for a reason. Asterisk. This is your victory too, Dad, Elijah had said earlier that morning. I don't care what they think. Asterisk Leonard had laughed then. I never thought I'd be in a room where every pen costs more than my old mailbag. Asterisk. Now they stood side by side, walking into the boardroom where half a dozen men and women rose from their leather chairs, offering firm nods and measured greetings. Contracts had been reviewed, presentations delivered. All that remained was the final identity check, a formality. Asterisk Elijah introduced his father briefly, and most nodded politely. But not Martin Hollis, Asterisk Hollis, the regional bank manager of First Federal, was an aging white man in a perfectly fitted navy blue suit with a smile that never reached his eyes. He had the air of a man who had attended Ivy League schools not for the education but for the pedigree. His voice was smooth, practiced. Asterisk. As a requirement, Hollis said, glancing through gold-rimmed glasses, all visitors who enter the executive signing room must provide a government-issued ID. It's procedure. Asterisk Elijah nodded. Of course, my father has it. Asterisk Leonard fumbled slightly with his worn wallet, hands trembling more from nerves than age. He pulled out an ID, creased but valid, and handed it forward with both hands. Asterisk. What happened next? Happened fast but felt slow. Asterisk. Martin Hollis took the ID between two fingers, held it up like it smelled of dust, then smirked faintly. Asterisk. Is this a joke? The air changed. Elijah's smile faded. Excuse me? Asterisk. Hollis turned the ID over with visible distaste, as though trying to find something wrong with it. He tilted it in the light, lips tightening. Asterisk. Then, without a word, he flicked his wrist and dropped the ID on the polished boardroom floor. Asterisk. The silence that followed felt radioactive. Asterisk. Leonard bent down slowly to retrieve it. His fingers touched the floor longer than necessary. The humiliation hung in the room like fog. Elijah's jaw clenched. What the hell was that? He asked, voice low but cold. Asterisk. Hollis chuckled, attempting to wave it off. No disrespect intended. Of course. We just need clean documentation. The card's old. And frankly, well, we don't typically allow non-essential guests into the executive closing suite. Asterisk. Everyone in the room heard what wasn't said. Leonard, standing quietly now with the ID in hand, was looking not at Hollis, but at the floor. Asterisk. Elijah rose slowly from his chair. My father is not a guest. He is the reason I'm sitting at this table. And you just disrespected him in front of an international board. Asterisk. Hollis spread his hands. Let's not be emotional, Mr. Grant. This is a business transaction. Asterisk. And you just ended it. Asterisk. Elijah closed the deal folder in front of him, lifted the binder, and turned to his legal team. We're done here. Asterisk a ripple of confusion went around the table. The Belgian investor on the left leaned forward. Mr. Grant, are you sure? We're hours from final signatures. Asterisk, I said we're done. Asterisk Elijah turned to his father and took his arm gently. Let's go, Dad. Asterisk Leonard hesitated. Son. It's a $5 billion deal. Asterisk, no deal, Elijah said, his voice suddenly louder, firm, full of legacy and fury. Is worth my father's dignity. He turned one last time to Hollis, who was now pale and stunned. You didn't just disrespect my father, Elijah said. You reminded me that no matter how high I climb, there are still people like you trying to shove me back down. But you don't hold the ladder anymore. I built one. Then he walked out. The doors closed behind them with a muted thud, but it sounded like a THUNDERCL ape. Asterisk 2 weeks later. The story had gone viral. Asterisk at first, it was just whispers in finance circles. Then someone leaked the security footage. The clip was short, silent, grainy, but undeniable. A white bank executive, well-groomed and smug, taking an old black man's ID and letting it fall like garbage to the floor. The son clearly powerful, clearly calm, standing tall in his tailored suit. And the moment he walked away, refusing a deal worth $5 billion because respect meant more than money. Every outlet ran it. $5 billion deal canceled over racism allegation. Asterisk CEO walks away after. Dad's ID thrown on floor. Elijah Grant makes a stand that rocks Wall Street. The headlines varied, but the message was the same. Something bigger than business had taken place in that room. Asterisk. Elijah sat in his Harlem penthouse now, the sun casting long shadows across the wooden floors. He hadn't spoken to the press yet. Every reporter from Forbes to CNN had called. Investors panicked, then praised. Board members had begged him to reconsider, but none had dared to question his choice aloud. They all knew better. Asterisk across the room, Leonard sat on the couch, quiet as usual, his eyes fixed on the muted television playing yet another news segment of the clip. Asterisk. I wish I hadn't dropped it, he said suddenly. Asterisk Elijah looked up. What? Asterisk. The ID, Leonard said, staring at the screen. I should have just left it on the table. I shouldn't have handed it to him like that. Made myself small. Asterisk Elijah walked over and sat beside him. Dad, none of this was your fault. Asterisk, I know that, Leonard said. But I still feel like I embarrassed you. Asterisk Elijah leaned forward, voice tight. You didn't embarrass me. You reminded me why I fight the way I do. You reminded the world that dignity isn't optional. Asterisk Leonard didn't respond, but his eyes softened. He looked down at his hands, those hands that had carried mailbags through rain and snow, that had tucked in a boy night after night with stories about strength and pride. Those hands now trembled under the weight of sudden fame. There was a knock at the door. Elijah stood up. His assistant, Liana, opened the door and stepped in, tablet in hand. Asterisk, you should see this, she said. It's happening now. Asterisk, she turned the screen to show a live stream. Martin Hollis, the same bank manager, now standing before a panel of First Federal Trust Bank's Ethics Committee. Behind him, reporters, flashes, a bank lawyer at his side. And on the screen behind him, that moment looping again and again, the ID falling, the silence. Elijah walking out. Hollis looked like a ghost now, pale, tight-jawed, reading from a written statement. I deeply regret the incident. It was never my intent to disrespect anyone. I understand the perception, no, the reality of how my actions came across. I apologize to Mr. Leonard Grant and to Elijah Grant. My actions were unacceptable. Asterisk Liana raised her eyebrow. He's trying to keep his job. Asterisk Elijah watched quietly, then handed the tablet back. He won't. Asterisk he turned toward the window. Across the skyline something was shifting. Not just the news cycle or the social media buzz, but the actual pulsing heart of business culture. People were watching. Young black entrepreneurs. Kids in the Bronx and Baltimore. Venture capitalists in San Francisco. Billion-dollar CEOs, clerks, teachers, fathers. Dignity for once had gone viral. Liana hesitated. There's more. We've received calls from 2 major banks offering full funding under your terms. Plus 1 sovereign fund from Dubai. They say what you did was revolutionary. Asterisk Elijah nodded slowly. Because it was human. Asterisk Leonard looked up. You still going through with the merger? Asterisk. I'm going through with something, Elijah said, turning back toward his father. But not with them. Not with anyone who can't see you the way I do. Silence hung for a moment. Then Leonard asked, You sure you're not giving up too much, son? Asterisk Elijah smiled faintly. Dad, I walked away from $5 billion to protect. The only wealth that matters, my roots. That boardroom? They thought they were making history, but we made it instead. Asterisk Leonard looked away for a second. Your mother would be proud. Asterisk Elijah swallowed hard, then sat down again beside him. I hope so. Asterisk. The city buzzed outside, horns and wind and life pressing up against the window panes. But inside, it was quiet and safe. Asterisk later that evening, Elijah opened his laptop. He didn't log into his trading dashboard, not his crypto wallet, not his cloud server. He opened a blank Word document and began to type, greater than the price of dignity, why I walked away. The first sentence was simple, asterisk greater than on June 12, 2025. I walked away from $5 billion because my father's dignity was worth more. Asterisk, he paused, breathing deeply. Then continued, asterisk. And in that moment, across devices and continents, the world began to understand something new about Power. Not just who had it, but who was finally done asking permission to use it. Asterisk.